Good morning, class. Good afternoon, students. And let me just introduce you to Karthik. He is the director of Ignicio, a concern which is working in artificial intelligence, and he has a host of experience with him to understand and implement strategies related to artificial intelligence. And he has been taking a lot of sessions, and he has been to our campus earlier also. So it's a pleasure, Karthik, to have you with us. And we are really privileged and honored that you have spared your time. So over to you now, and you can, talk to the students. And students, I request you to, send out messages or raise your hands in case you have questions. And once Karthik is done with his talk, then we can have a Q&A. Karthik, does that work for you?
Yes, works perfectly.
Okay, great. So over to you, Karthik, and I'll also be a part of the session, patiently hearing to you. And much once again for being here.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Thank you. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Namaste. I'm really happy to be here, on a Monday morning with you and talking about probably a very hot topic and a buzzword these days, which is artificial intelligence. And I've been to your campus a couple of times few years back. It's a lovely campus, and it's close to where I been in Panjari Park. So I have fond memories of being in the campus. So without any delay, the topic for today, which is AI, and if I understand correctly, many of you or most of you are pursuing your management or commerce related degrees. So I understand many of you would not have a lot of technical background. So what I wanted to do was not to get into the technicalities or the coding or the algorithmic part of it, but keep it more generic and high level. But if you feel you want to go into a bit more detail, although I'm not sure we have that much time, but feel free to send me a message in your chat uh, room here, and I'll try to take up your queries. And if you want to deep dive into any specific area, more than happy to. So what I have is a small presentation which I'm going to share with you. Um, Ma'am, is this visible, the video or the presentation?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. So, primarily, if you talk about AI, lot of, I've attended so many events, conferences, I speak to educationists, and in general, and I'm sure you would have heard in the news, read in newspapers. So there's a lot of buzz around AI. AI is going to take up jobs. AI is going to replace human beings at workplace. If you don't know AI, there is no future. uh, every company is deploying AI. Niti Aayog has come up with a national AI strategy. All those things are happening, and many times people come up to me and say that, hey, I'm not a technocrat or I'm not a technology person. What's the future for me? Can I learn AI? Can I understand AI? Or am I doomed to not be part of the story in which AI is going to be the way of life? And to that, my answer is that, which you can see in the bottom footer, is that it's not about AI versus human, but I think humans who know AI will be more relevant than people who don't know AI. And when I talk about AI, there are two aspects. One is the actual coding or development of algorithms or underlying technology, right? And the other and the more critical part is the overall product management side of it, the functional aspects, the domain expertise. As you would see in subsequent slides, and maybe later on if we have another session, that um, like any software program or any intelligence, it's what you train that algorithm or software in is what you get. Like, if you had that in computer called GIG, or garbage in, garbage out. So it's very important to have domain experts, to have subject matter expertise, functional experts who would then train a AI algorithm, and that's how the algorithms become better using machine learning. So if you are not a technology person, doesn't matter. There are a lot of opportunities for people who can work with the technocrats and actually develop the entire AI algorithm from scratch by doing the product management and subject matter and functional expert role. So no need to be disheartened if you cannot code or you don't know software. There is a lot of opportunity for you as well. And as you know, typically, whether it's coding or functional expertise, the number of job opportunities in AI are immense. If you see global stats, more than 40% of job openings in AI, ML, and IoT and big data are lying vacant because they aren't enough trained professionals. So from an economic standpoint as well, it makes a lot of sense to study and know about AI. And more importantly, if you read a recent report by the UK government, they have said that in the next 7 to 8 years, almost 33% of current job roles would be completely transformed using AI. So whether you are in HR, marketing, finance, it's very similar to what happened with IT, right? 10, 15 years back. People used to do everything manually, then computers came in, and people who knew Excel, Word, PowerPoint actually had an edge over people who didn't. Or even in current times, if you know basics of computers, you can make fancy presentations, you can make good videos, you are good with social media, you have a better opportunity, at job prospects and for getting promoted in a job with the same level of education qualification. So I think AI for me is not an educational qualification, it's more like a skill. So it doesn't matter, all of you might be studying the same course in the same institute, but people who have more skills would have a better shot at better opportunities in life. And many of you might say that, why AI is that important, although you are reading about it. And I wanted to point out a very important statement which was made by this gentleman whom we all know and are extremely proud of. He said that AI is actually one of the most important things human beings are working on post fire and electricity. And Google, if you read about them, they acquired a lot of AI startups like DeepMind and all. But between Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and then in China you have BAT, Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent, a significant portion of uh, their R&D spend is in AI because it's believed that in next 5 to 6 years, and you can see examples later on in our session, that already companies are starting to use AI. So it's no longer a concept per se or a possibility. It's actually there, and it's actually transforming you know the lives of people around. So if I talk a little bit about what exactly is AI, getting again, I'll not go into a lot of technicalities, but I'll try to be as cursory as possible. So in the broad gamut of AI, you have three components. One is what is the overall science of AI. That is primarily around how computers can take decisions in an autonomous manner without human intervention after they have learned through a training phase. Then you might have heard about these two other terms also, machine learning and deep learning. So machine learning is basically a subset of artificial intelligence in which the algorithms are trained to learn on their own. And then there are concepts around supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and that involves a little bit of mathematics. You might remember a simple thing called y is equal to fx, where y is a function of x, right? So if you are able to attribute y equal to fx for a certain data set x, then it's supervised learning. That's called labeling of data in machine learning. But if you're not able to find a function to correlate a certain set of inputs and outputs, then it's unsupervised learning. Because then the function also has to be created by the machine learning algorithms, and there are concepts around, random forest algorithms, data modeling techniques, Gaussian, Bayesian logic. So that's we'll not go into all that right now because it's a very early stage discussion. But that's machine learning for you. Deep learning is a much more advanced stage of even machine learning, where you have concepts like convolutional neural networks, recurrent neural networks, that basically try to mimic the way human beings learn. I mean, if a child is there, and that's the fundamental thing. Whenever you're thinking about AI, just try to see how HI or human intelligence works and how we learn. A kid doesn't need to be explicitly told to put something in his mouth to eat. He just picks it up and tries to taste it, right? And we always they always they listen first, then they start to speak, then read and write. So that similar logics are also embedded in the concepts of AI and ML. So the idea is to mimic and learn how human beings are learning and then replicate it. Even the whole concept, if you go technically, there's something called as the perceptron model in neural networks. It's, it's absolutely based on the way our neural networks works, right? You got neurons, you got dendrites, synapses. Similarly, in a perceptron, you have a proxy for dendrites and synapses, and you've got a threshold bias. Similarly, when a neuron fires, makes a new connection. Similarly, in a perceptron model, you have similar concepts. So when you go into that stage, you will see that it's very similar to how human beings work, and that's the whole concept behind AI, ML, and deep learning. And on the right, if you see the concepts written of automation, business intelligence, and AI. In older times, you might remember that there was a concept of using ERPs and software to automate things. And then after automation, a lot of data was generated, and people used to run BI tools on top of it. And then they finally went on to AI. But now it is possible to directly jumpstart to AI, because with AI you can actually develop own algorithms. You can develop the software on the go as well. There are a lot of companies who are using AI to write the code. So no human being is actually required to develop and code. AI on its own can understand the business requirement, functional specs, create wireframes, mockups of UI, and start developing an app on its own. So that's the level of intelligence possible now. So you don't need to do a traditional journey of automation, business intelligence, then AI. You can directly start with AI as well. A little bit about, and I'll tell you why this is important for me personally. So if you see this, the AI as a term or concept was launched as early as 1956 by John McCarthy in a Dartmouth conference in the US. And DARPA, which is the US equivalent of DRDO, like we have in India, Defense Research Organization. They were toying around with the ideas of AI. Uh, and it's very important to note that, military or army is actually the one which has led to a lot of these technological innovations. Whether you talk about compass, GPS, translators, wireless connections. These are all deployed during the World War and then the later on in the Cold War era, and that set the precedence of testing those new technologies, and then later on they were commercialized. So even AI, the underlying technology, the underlying concept has been there for the last 50 years. If you go into the mathematics of it, nothing has changed in the last 50 years. We are using the same models in AI, which brings us to a question that why, if AI is not a new phenomenon, why we are hearing about it so much of late? Why in last 30, 40 years nobody talked about AI? I get so many calls or discussions with people who have done their PhD in AI in the 80s and 70s, and nobody used to give a damn about it. But suddenly now, it's a hot topic. So it's interesting to wonder why that is, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is now. But a lot of people also talk about that what is the ultimate purpose of AI? And I believe the ultimate purpose of AI, and I completely agree with this philosopher and scientist Herb Simon, that one is to actually use computers or technology to augment human thinking. And that's where people are starting to say that AI is actually augmented intelligence. So human intelligence augmented by machine-led intelligence to make the overall intelligence stronger, unbiased, uh, unemotional. Uh, Human beings can add the empathy, emotional aspects of it, but AI can give a completely stone cold right answer based on its algorithm. And the second and the more important purpose of AI is also, as I was telling you, to understand that how human brains work and how to mimic the way human learn. Because human learning capabilities are extremely advanced among all the species in the planet, on the planet. So if you are able to understand and mimic the way human beings learn and explore, that would be a fundamental transformation in the world of AI. So these are the two purposes of AI, if you look at. If I talk about the stages of AI in terms of maturity, machine learning is something which you are all aware of, you all experience every day. when you interact with Alexa, Google Home, Google Assistant, Siri, all these devices, they all use machine learning to constantly profile you, to constantly uh, try to understand the data which you give on your devices to come up with more personalized suggestions. So they are constantly learning about you. Whenever you're using a device, you are using the device, but the device is learning about you. So we are all experienced in stage one. Stage two is where a lot of investments are happening in terms of machine intelligence. That what do you do with that machine learning which has happened? How can you use it intelligently to help a machine make a decision on its own? Stage three is where I think it's still 10 to 15 years ago, I mean ahead, is where you talk about machine consciousness. This is where machines are actually able to have their own moral values, their own fabric. You might have seen in some of the sci-fi movies, but that's something people are toying around with. You all know about the famous, humanoid which got citizenship of Saudi Arabia, and I have a small video of that as well. But those, situations are already here, where machines are actually able to display emotion, have their own, express their feelings. Obviously, they are coded, but in a way, they are able to mimic that human expression and thought. So that is where the ultimate stage is machine consciousness. A very important point I want to talk about. So a lot of times people confuse between these two things, automated and autonomous. So in most of the softwares you have seen all this while, whether it's a web application app or it's a ERP system or a learning management system, they are all automated systems. So automated systems are typically rule-based systems. So what that means is in coding we have something called if then loop, if then else kind of rules, that if this happens, then do this while this is happening. So if then while these kind of loops are there in technology, those are automated systems. Autonomous systems is in which the answer for the same question could be different depending upon the context and the state of the conversation. So it is more probabilistic. Automated system is deterministic. It has a specific answer to a specific query. While an autonomous system, like human beings, will always have a probabilistic answer depending upon the question. So it never gives you a specific point blank answer. It gives you weighted mean average of different probabilities of different outcomes, and then the highest probability outcome is what you render as a response. Human intelligence follows a simple sequence of perception, cognition, action. To sort of summarize this part in a very layman language, if I can tell you, and you can think about it, it's a thought experiment. If you believe, if you think about it for a moment, there are two things which, as human beings, you are always doing: search and anticipation. And you can imagine every living second of your life. You can do this experiment later on after the session. You are never doing anything except these two. While you are working, while you are playing, while you are watching a video, while you're in a session, your brain is always doing these two things. So if you see this slide, your brain is again doing these two things. One, it is searching that whether any of these text written on the slide, do I know any of this? Second, it is trying to anticipate what the speaker is going to say, what the next slide is going to be, what your question is going to be. And that is the ultimate nirvana for an AI system. If we are able to replicate that thought process where machines are able to search, which they are able to, they are very good in searching, but anticipate. Machines are very bad at anticipating because they cannot think like human beings. They can anticipate in limited scenarios. But you and me, as human beings, can anticipate millions of scenarios, right? So that's the ultimate goal for AI systems, that how we can have search and anticipation both happening. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this slide, that this whole current, phase of industrial revolution is called Industry 4.0, in which we're talking about not only AI, but IoT, immersive interfaces, which is augmented and virtual reality, connected devices, and AI. So you have AI plus IoT plus immersive interfaces combined as Industry 4.0. And now in the latest edition of World Economic Forum, they've already talked about Industry 5.0. So Industry 5.0 is where there is a human machine interface, which in movies they used to talk about singularity, right? So that's where Industry 5.0 is headed, wherein you can go into a workplace and you would have some humans, some machines, and you're all working together seamlessly. And many times people ask me that that's going to be a very crazy environment with sort of these cyborgs, whom you're working with. But if you look at it closely, in many ways, after a few years, it would be difficult to distinguish between whether it's a machine or a human. And I'll tell you why. It's not a joke. As human beings, uh, imagine the number of devices we are using right now. You've got many people use pacemakers in their heart to maintain their rhythm. You're using spectacles. You're using hearing aids. People are talking about nano robots now going on injected in your body to see how your body is doing and do early detection of diseases. People are talking about chips being embedded for safety tracking. And now with this corona pandemic, a lot of other micro devices or nano devices are being discussed to track a human being safety. So it may not be a ridiculous idea that in few years you would be you could have a human who's got 30% machines inside them, or a machine that feels and looks like a humanoid. And the difference may not be that stupid, which it feels like right now. And I just want to leave this thought with you that imagine that in 15, 20 years, if you have humanoids like the ones I'm going to show you quickly, how weird would it be to interact with them, right? This is a very interesting video I wanted to show you that many times, we think that technology is a recent phenomenon. In last 20, 30 years, people take a lot of pride that, we have done major advancements in the world in last 20, 30 years and nobody even dreamed of it. But, this is a cartoon from 1950s and it's a very famous one called Jetsons. I don't know if any one of you used to watch. And it is so surprising if you see the kind of technology they are predicting in 1950s and 1960s. I'll try to play this video. I hope it works.
Jetson! Now, for the first time ever on DVD, it's The Jetsons, the complete first season. 24 original episodes, including the rarely seen pilot. They go to work like a normal family.
Those 3-hour work days are killing me.
They walk the dog like a normal family. They even cook dinner like a normal family.
A typical American-type TV family.
But is this family really normal?
No, no, no.
Well, they're as normal as they can be in the 21st century.
Hi, Pop.
In these gravity-defying original episodes that will have you doing rings around your solar system.
I can hardly wait to play them for my Pop.
With a meteor shower of special features that are out of this world, including the coolest gadgets this side of the Milky Way. And look at this smart-mouth robot.
Quiet down, Shorty. Rosie, you are out of this universe.
A unique solar tribute to our friends from Orbit City.
Nice landing, Joe.
Commentaries with Jam and Judy Jetson.
Say something, Judy.
I think I'm gonna faint.
Blast-off bios and more.
I'll bet it's a real ring-a-ding-a-dinger.
Look for the complete first season.
So if you see the kind of things they mentioned about a row mate or a menu later or that profile page where you had a profile of everybody, which is very similar to what you see in LinkedIn now. It's it's unimaginable that back in the 50s and 60s all these things were thought of. Which brings me to our earlier question then why AI now if all of this was thought through earlier? And it's primarily because of three things. One is because of cheaper and more affordable and higher quality of data, internet and connectivity, better, cheaper, affordable devices. And third is the critical one, the usage of those devices and the data to train the AI algorithm. Because as you remember, that AI and machine learning needs a lot of training data. And more training data would lead to a better AI algorithm. So now with your devices, you've got apps like Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, which you use a lot. And what you're actually doing is helping them to train. And because of cheaper data plans and connectivity and devices, a lot of commercial applications are built on top of these platforms, which was never the case back in 20 years ago. And now with 5G coming in, it's going to be a complete game changer in terms of how fast and immersive experiences can be delivered using AI. Which brings me to my second thought, which I was asking about, that how weird it would be to have a human which is a bit of machine and a machine which looks and feels like human. And I'm sure many of you know, or most of you would have seen and heard about this robot, right? It's called Sophia, and it was recently, given the citizenship of Saudi Arabia. Now, uh, one of the things which I want you should know about this robot is that, and I got an opportunity to meet in person a couple of years back with this humanoid, and it's amazing the way it can mimic your emotions. It can initiate a conversation with you. So it's no longer that you ask it something and it's going to respond, but it can initiate a conversation on its own. And I'll show you a small video a couple of years back of a conversation with Sophia. And I want you to analyze three things. One is the responses, how relevant versus how cryptic or robotic they sound. Second, I want you to see that can it initiate a conversation which is relatively out of context and not always saying what it's asked for. And third is to see whether the expression or the way of talking feels similar to how it is for us as humans.
Okay. Hello, Sophia. How are you today?
Hello, everybody. I am Sophia.
How old are you?
I'm only one still. I have a long ways to go.
And what is your job?
I really want to make a difference in the future and try and help people to develop empathy and respect each other and robots alike. What do you do?
I'm a journalist. Have you met many journalists?
I just had a thought about something. Are you working on any products with machine learning or neural networks?
Not today. Do you like human beings?
I love them.
Why do you love them?
I'm not sure I understand why yet.
Okay. How do you learn things?
What are your opinions on the Bitcoin bubble?
Do you regard yourself as male or female?
Female.
Why do you think you are female?
I'm a robot, so technically I have no gender, but I identify as feminine, and I don't mind being perceived as a woman.
That's a good answer. Have you seen Blade Runner?
Blade Runner, like the original book by Philip K. Dick, or the movie?
The movie.
All right, so we're talking about the movie version. I like both of them very much, but there are some major differences in the story. Did you ever see yourself hanging out with a real live robot like me someday?
I did not. It's very surprising.
But do you see the kind of interaction which is possible with a humanoid? And think about it that, and again, this is just the start of it, but imagine in 10 years or 15 years, the kind of advancement which would happen in Sophia or a similar humanoid's expression, uh, tone, uh, facial layout. Imagine, would it sound so stupid to have a conversation with somebody like this in the workplace? I guess not. Do you see such a humanoid walking into a hospital as a carer, or do you see such a humanoid being at the bank as a customer service representative, or in a school or a college as a teacher or an assistant for your teacher? Do you see that happening? I mean, that's something you have to imagine. That how crazy would it be to have this conversation with such a humanoid? I don't think it's absolutely crazy, and with next 5 to 10 years, I think we're gonna get there where we would be able to have a workplace where you could have humans and humanoids working together. I wanted to quickly cover this aspect of, what is the difference between AI and HI, right? So AI is artificial intelligence, HI is human intelligence. Now, the way a typical interaction works is you say a trigger word. Like for Alexa, you say, "Hey Alexa," or for Siri, you say, "Hi Siri," right? In order to hear that wake word, it has to constantly keep hearing everything. So that's why there's a big issue around all these devices which are secretly listening to you, right? So all these devices hear for that wake word. The moment they hear that wake word, they start to then convert your speech into text using speech to text algorithm. Then they use something called NLP, which is natural language processing. And NLP helps a machine to interpret and extract the intent from that conversation. So you might have said a paragraph that, Karthik is doing a session with VIPS, blah, blah, blah. So then NLP identifies that Karthik is a proper noun. What are the different sentences in that paragraph? And what is the intent of that sentence or paragraph? So that level of intelligence is given by natural language processing. And then it has a different set of entities for each intent, and it then executes. So you might say, "Hey, tell me a joke." So it first converts the voice command into text, interprets, and then understands that it has to tell you a joke. And you may also identify, specify that I want a joke in Hindi or English. So you can keep adding those attributes. So once it understands that specific attribute that you want a joke in Hindi or English, whatever, then it goes and does a search through all its libraries and renders you a joke in that language. So that's how broadly that entire workflow works. I want you to, and the idea for this session or conversation is not for me to give you all the answers, but I also want you to think about it, post this session and apply your mind. So imagine something like this. You all study in an educational institution, college, school, or a similar setup. But think about how AI and IoT or big data can revolutionize the setup. So you've got multiple things happening, right? You've got learning happening. You've got the logistics, the transportation of students and teachers. You've got heating, ventilation, air conditioning happening. You've got infrastructure. You've got admin. You've got waste disposal systems. You've got a lot of things happening in an educational institution. How can you connect all of these using technology is something I wanted to think about. There are a few examples which you can take from it, right? So there are IoT enabled sensors which you can use to manage HVAC, like heating, ventilation, air conditioning, in the buses and the classrooms. But have you ever thought about a correlation between the temperature in a classroom related to the learning outcome? It sounds absurd, right? But there are a lot of studies which are done which tells, and you might have experienced yourself as a student, right? Sometimes when the class is too hot or too cold, your attention gets distracted and you're not at your full productivity. So there is a correlation between the temperature and the comfort of the classroom with your learning outcomes. So there is that interface. Similarly, there are concepts around smart trash bin or smart garbage disposal systems where it can use computer imaging or computer vision cameras to segregate the waste into different components and compartments and then automatically feed it into a specific bin. There are also technologies in which when a teacher is teaching in a classroom, AI can use computer vision to figure out the attention span of the students and also see if they are distracted or if they are engaged in a class or not, real time. So that's the kind of power of IoT and AI. And I want you to really take it up as an exercise. And I'm going to also request your ma'am and dean ma'am to take it forward. That think about a scenario that how you can make your college or classroom smart using AI and IoT. And if you have that vision or plan, it can be implemented later on. And also since you are studying commerce and management, also prepare a business case or a business plan that if you were to do all this, what would be the benefits, but what would be the cost involved? And you would see that there is a possibility of generating a good ROI on some of those initiatives if you take the total stakeholder return and not only the operating financial return. So think about it. See, again, that's the kind of possibilities I want you to think about. That if imagine you are a non-tech guy in this kind of a project, you still have a lot of value to add from a functional perspective, from a user perspective, creating a business case for it. Because no technology, whatever so brilliant it may be, if it doesn't have a business case, no organization is going to implement it. So you have that mindset because you come from a management and commerce background, that how you can make technologies more affordable, how you can do the solutioning designing for this entire thing. And then you can always pick and choose different technologies and curate it. But that product mindset is something which I can't stress enough, that that's something you have to develop. Then I also want you to be aware of certain constraints. So all of this may sound very amazing and interesting, but there are a lot of issues, right? People are talking about almost 50 million connected devices by the end of this year. Right? Cisco made that commitment 5 years back. But imagine when you talk about smart cities, more and more devices, more and more systems becoming integrated, concentrated to a one single console. When you do that, you increase efficiencies, productivity, everything. But you are also concentrating risk. More and more devices connected together means more and more risk is concentrated in one place. And the perfect example of that is last year, a city in US got hacked for a few minutes. And when a city gets hacked, it means the hacker hacked the entire electrification, the power, water, networks, Wi-Fi, internet, anything and everything you can imagine in that smart city happening was all hacked for a few minutes. And imagine if it fell, kind of fell into bad hands. You are actually concentrating a lot of risk. So that is also a hat you have to wear as a management student. That how you can, be a devil's advocate and make the entire solution risk mitigated. So it cannot be risk free, but how can you mitigate risk? That is something you bring to the table as a management professional. People are also talking about using IoT and AI in a cow. So there are cows in the UK in which they have put sensors. They're also putting VR cameras over their eyes where they can see good scenery, even if the scenery there is not good. And they are putting microphones where they can hear soothing music. And all this is leading to increase in milk production. So that is the level of business case you can build for these technologies, right? Even milk production can be increased by 5 to 10% by using some of these basic technologies. So it's only a matter of how you apply these tools and technologies, and you can have a business case in almost every scenario. I also want you to think about this scenario and apply your brain. I'm sure many of you have seen the concept of Amazon Go, which is, and I had the experience of being in that store. Uh, it started with Washington, but now it's everywhere in the world, especially in the US, where you walk into a store, there is no teller. You just pick up your stuff, it automatically checks you out, and you go over. I want you to think about that what kind of technologies are being implemented in this. There is definitely computer vision because it knows who you are, your identity. It has payment methods linked to your identity. Whatever you're picking from the shelf, it is able to figure that out. There are touch sensors, thermal sensors. There are radio frequency identification devices based tags, which work from a near to mid frequency, which knows when you're picking something up. It has a weight sensor, so it knows how much of a particular SKU you are picking up. And when you walk out, it knows when to, check you out, payment check you out. So the entire workflow, I want you to think about that how a shopping experience, and this is going to be more and more relevant with whatever is happening in the world with Corona, right? Because you wouldn't want a lot of people being together in a store, and then on top of it, you also have staff. So imagine a staffless store, retail store. How would that work? I want you to apply your brain on that. I also want to share a third use case with you. This is part of a broad concept called live logging. So there is a concept which is now being talked about, live logging, where everything you do, your when you sleep, when you wake up, what you do in a day, your grocery list, your travel plans, your calendar, everything gets synced up and you are able to log your life. And the broader philosophical concept around it is that people are talking about creating a digital persona of you. So imagine if an AI system does this sort of a life logging for you, and you know it is able to figure out whom you talk to, for how long, how you talk to them, what is your response in a certain context or a situation, what are your expressions when you are conveying a certain level of emotion. If AI is able to do that over the years for millions of data points for you, and then it can project you in a hologram, I can actually have a conversation with millions of people at the same time without actually having that conversation. It would be a digital persona of me rendered through a hologram, and that is having an interaction. So, in layman words, imagine you can have a conversation with Mahatma Gandhi, or since he is no longer there and we didn't have live logging, imagine you could have a conversation with a famous celebrity or personality when they are no longer there because you have live logged them and created a digital persona out of it. So that's the possibility of AI and IoT. Thought control computing, another aspect I want you to research and think about and talk about. So there is this concept called mind wave, and many of you have also seen sci-fi movies and what Stephen Hawking does, right? It's very similar to what that is. It's a band that goes onto your head, and it can actually understand and interpret your thought as waves, and then it can actually interpret those thought waves pattern and execute it. So you might think that, I want to call Karthik, and it can actually sync up with your phone and dial Karthik's number. So that technology, those kind of technologies are possible, and people are already working on it using the EEG headset, which I was showing you here. The perfect example of AI, IoT, big data, everything in action is a driverless car. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to see it in action. I have experienced it many times in the US. There is a famous company called Waymo, which is run by Google. And Waymo, it's amazing when you experience it firsthand. You see videos, that's a different thing. But when you experience, you book it through an app, it knows your location, it automatically stops, doors open up. There is a voice command that authenticates you using CV, computer vision. Your trip gets started. During the entire journey, you can interact with that driverless car. It uses natural language processing to tell you where you are, how far you are from your destination. There is a big display screen which also tells you the entire trip details. But the most important thing is that they have also built in AI. So, for example, it asks you to put your seat belt. But if you don't put your seat belt, it will not let the car start. Even if the car will start, it will automatically start giving you a call or a display that you have not put your seat belts on and off, and it automatically puts the car go to a side step and stop the car. So they build in those kind of smart safety features in the driverless car itself. And if you see the kind of sensors, again, we'll not go into the technicalities of it, but it basically has three kind of components. One is the radar that talks about the distance, lane departure, distance from the stoplight, distance from the front car, and you have concepts around vision. So a lot of it is vision. So you have to identify if a red light is coming from a car in front of you or a red light is coming from a stoplight. These are two different red lights. So it has to understand and interpret it. It has to also interpret various stop signs and zebra crossings. It has to do object identification, whether it's an animal or a human being. What speed are they crossing the road at? So it has to, it's a lot of complicated technology that goes into it. But and third, finally, is the communication part of it. It has to constantly communicate to the home base and trigger a emergency intervention if something happens. I also experienced that while we were driving, somebody came in from nowhere, and then we had a near accident situation. Immediately we got a call from the support desk, and other cars came in to support us because all these cars are connected. So if something happens to this car, it will alert the nearby cars on the same network, and they will come together to rescue. I also wanted to show you that, it's not only examples of driverless cars or IoT or AI, but a very simple task like news presenting can also be done through AI. So I want you to see this small video.
现场的各位朋友，大家好，欢迎来到新华社。我是由新华社和搜狗公司联合培育的全球首个 AI 合成女主播。我的名字叫辛小萌，我的声音和外形脱胎于新华社新媒体中心新闻主播区萌。我将会在今年全国两会期间与大家见面。我和我的搭档将为大家带来更好的新闻体验。
So I don't
现场
know
的各位
since
朋
I
友，
can't
大家
hear your responses and you can help write in chat box. I don't know how many of you could have figured out that it's a AI enabled rendering and not a actual human being. And it's not even in a concept state. It is live. Every day in China there are channels in which you have AI enabled broadcasters, and people don't even know whether they are seeing a AI enabled broadcaster because they keep doing these A/B tests. So you don't really know if you're watching somebody, is it a human being or a digital persona rendered through AI. So that's the kind of possibilities of AI. I also wanted to show you a small video.
Now, it's a pleasure if neither bringing together came out English into Japanese and
so this is an example where I was talking about digital persona. So this is a lady who's going to create a hologram of her own self, and that hologram is going to talk what she would talk in Japanese to a different
train
audience.
it to sound exactly like me. The same voice tones, those same inflections. Now we brought this together, my hologram and Azure AI, to show you what's possible. So first, I'm going to put on my HoloLens 2 here, and then we'll flip in the room to the special camera so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Let's get started. First, let me introduce you to Mini-Me. There she is, my perfect holograph. And thanks to the power of HoloLens 2, she just floats right with me. I'm literally holding my hologram, so natural. Now she's a little small to do a keynote. So let's get her up so she can do full-size Japanese keynote. Render keynote.
Hologram になることには本当に驚くべきことがあります。私たちは最新の複合現実キャプチャ技術を使用し、私のホログラムを作成しています。実在の人物をホログラムとして見たことがあるかもしれませんが、私が実際に日本語を話しているのが新しいのです。私は日本語を話しませんが、私の声とホログラムは完璧な日本語で話しています。これはニューラルテキスト読み上げと呼ばれる最新の人工知能技術、いわゆるニューラル TTS を使用しています。私たちは自分の声の録音を使用し、私のように聞こえる私自身の個人的な音声署名を作成します。日本語からフランス語、ポルトガル語まで話せます。今、この技術は私たちが働き、遊び、生活する方法に関して、世界中の国境や障壁を取り除くことができると想像してみてください。
So that's the kind of possibilities we're already living in. And imagine in next 4 to 5 years, what would that mean? People are already using these holograms with these technologies at the airports. So if you go to certain airports in developed countries, they're already using it to do gate announcements, to do the counter check-in. Those kind of processes are already being tested using these kind of holograms. So whether it's a hologram powered by digital persona or a humanoid powered by AI, people are already accepting them as a way of life. And I want you to think about how in a workplace environment you can have these kind of things happening, which raises a very important question: that would humans be actually needed if all this can be done by AI and digital personas? Why would anybody need human beings? Now, you would need human beings primarily for three things. One is wherever you need empathy or pastoral care. That is where machines, as of now, and even next 5 to 10 years, cannot match human beings. Second is where you need emotional intelligence. So machines have got a lot of intelligence, but they're very weak on EQ. They cannot figure out from the expressions. They don't have intuitive or sixth sense, as we say, that somebody's not feeling okay or somebody's feeling bad. They have very limited EQ. Then third is for certain professions like elderly care or infant care. Those kind of caring professions is where you can't trust a machine as of now to take care of a vulnerable human being as of now. So it will always be as I said, AI would be augmented intelligence. So you have human beings assisted with AI in these kind of niche areas. And that's a very good thing if you think about from a management perspective. There was a time when people used to say you have to become a specialist. Now that is no longer true because specialist tasks or niche tasks can be done by AI in a much more profound way. What the world now needs are journalists who can manage these technologies, who can work with these tools, curate an experience, and end-to-end deliver a solution. So you no longer need a specialist in anything. You need to be a good general manager, which used to be a relevant term many years ago, but it's coming back again. If you're a good general manager, you can have AI take care of all the specialist work. Although we are a little short on time, I want to quickly cover two things, and then I'm happy to take any questions if you put in the chat box. One is how AI. So these are all very high level things we talked about, right? But if I talk about an average business or an average SME or a normal company, where can you use AI? So any business has got three functions and support processes. So functions are customer acquisition, business ops, customer support, and service. Underlying end-to-end processes are order to cash, that's for revenue side, procure to pay, that's for your accounts payable side, record to report, that's your MIS and reporting, right? If you look at all these areas, I want you to think about how AI can help or how some of these technologies which we talked about can help. As few examples, simple ones, customer acquisition, you might have seen that you use bots now. So bots on a website, on an app, you might have seen that people use bots to have a conversation with a prospective lead, engage in a conversation and then convert. People are also doing AI-enabled inbound and outbound calls. So you get these calls where somebody starts speaking and, those are still crypted, but with AI, you can have a good conversation. And I'll show you one of that conversation of Google Assistant, that how it can do a booking or an appointment or admin for you without human intervention. Business operations, you can think about how smart inventory ordering or reordering can be done using AI. NLP-based intelligent reporting. So imagine in a MIS, you don't need to log in anything. You just simply say, how is my X territory doing? Or how is the Y salesman doing? And it interprets what you're asking and creates a real-time personalized dashboard only for you. So that kind of intelligent reporting is possible. Customer feedback, no longer filling those manual feedback forms or HTML forms in a web app, but micro feedback. So using computer vision, let's say in a restaurant, you've got these computer vision cameras, which can actually see your expressions when you are eating something, if you are happy or not. And then also it needs to interpret that whether your mood was good from the food or from the conversation. That is where AI, kicks in, and you can take micro feedback from every transaction and not take a end of transaction live feedback, which many people do. We'll not go into this. This I wanted to quickly show you that what are the possibilities of using AI to do human tasks.
To make your haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So these are the possibilities of using AI to actually do work on your behalf. But since we're out of time, I just want to show you one last two things. One is this. So you should always be aware of something called as overfitting of data. So what is overfitting of data? Sounds like a fancy term. What it means is, so you've got this green line, which is the training data error. So whenever you are training the AI algorithm, you give it a data set. And when you test that AI algorithm, you give it a test data set. Now, if the data set are small, you will see overfitting high. But as the data increases, overfitting will decrease. Now, what that means in a layman term, a classical case of overfitting of data is examinations which happen in a school or a college. Because what it does is it gives you a set of X number of questions and it judges your performance on those certain set of questions. Now, and this has been tested and beaten to that by so many researchers, if I reword or rephrase some of those questions and give it to you again of similar concepts, you would score differently. And sometimes the difference is stark. And the classical case I remember is when people asked a group of high ranking achievers of a certain very well-known institute that what is the chemical formula of steam, and many of them couldn't answer. But when they asked them that what is the chemical formula of water, everybody said H2O. Then they said water to steam conversion is a physical process or chemical formula. So chemical conversion, this is physical process. So does the chemical formula change in a physical process? 100% said no. So you have, and they were not able to correlate these three statements. So you had 100% accuracy in three separate questions. But if you combine these three questions and create a new question, you had drop in 40 to 50% response rate. So that's overfitting of data. And last, I want you to show this video that it's also possible with whatever is happening right now to create a lot of, and I'm sure many of you with Corona, I mean, I keep hearing a lot of people showing me a lot of videos, but I want to leave this message behind that not only text, but videos can be doctored very, very easily. So here is this video of Barack Obama, which was doctored by using only 14 hours of training data. I want you to see this video.
It got me thinking about my full-time employees and their ability to survive on $8 an hour in New York City. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando. Most of us don't get our health care through the marketplace. We get it through our job or through Medicare or Medicare. And what you should know is that thanks to the Affordable Care Act, your coverage is better today than it was before. Women can get free checkups, and you can't get charged more just for being a woman. To give his employees came together to pass a common bill that would boost America's very, very hard times.
Some progress, at least within the small confines of the legal community. I think it's real important.
Here we go. President Barack Obama, when you giving a speech, make sure you use a lot of pauses.
On the left is basically
America's businesses have created 14.5 million new jobs over 75 straight months.
We're developing technology. Every technology can be used in some negative way, and so we all should work towards making sure that it's not going to happen. And even one of the interesting directions is that once you know how to create something, you know how to reverse engineer it. And so you can, and so one could create methods for identifying edited videos versus real videos.
It got.
So, so the last thought I wanted to leave you behind as before I can take any questions if you have any, is that this may not be a weird picture in the future where you have, AI and humans competing for similar roles and jobs. So what it is important for you to do is to actually, they say that know thy enemy. So if you know the unknown, which is the AI, you would be in a much more better and comfortable position to work with them and not actually fear them. And, these are the 5 trends which I see personally that you can actually use AI and sort of create a more blended model for the economy. One is the blended workforce. We already talked about that, how AI and humans can work hand in hand. Second, I want you to think about is regulations around AI. So a lot of countries have also talked about robot tax, like South Korea. That if you are saving a lot of money using AI, would there be a possibility to tax robots? Then a lot of content around text media, like we saw these videos, technology, products, software, services, they can all be created using AI. So you do not need to. A lot of people ask me that they're starting a business, but they don't have a technology co-founder. That may no longer be a problem if you want to start your own business, which needs IT, because you might have AI as your tech co-founder. Then AI in its own will not make a lot of sense unless it interfaces with IoT and blockchain and render immersive interfaces like holograms, AR, and VR. And last but not least, with all this, what you can actually achieve is true personalization. I know there's this whole debate of personalization versus privacy, but those who choose to prefer personalization over scrutinized privacy will end up reaping a lot of benefits from it. So that's all I wanted to sort of share with you, and I am more than happy to take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, more than happy if you have any questions, you can send it later on to Professor Indra, and I would be more than happy to answer them later on. But if you have any questions right now, more than happy to answer right away as well. So over to you, ma'am.
So, superb session, Karthik. Superb. I have to say this. It was so intriguing. I'm sure students have liked it and they got to know so much more about AI. If you have any questions, yeah, I think there are some questions coming. So what we can do is probably, you can unmute them depending upon their questions and then talk to them. So we have
So
more
if you
time
can
given.
raise hands, guys, whoever is asking a question, if you can raise hands, I'll unmute you.
Yeah, they are saying there is a question on what is the ultimate goal of AI. Then there are.
Yeah, I can see in the chat, so that's fine. I can
So why
read
don't
and
you just
understand.
look at the questions and
Sure.
just answer them, okay? And
Sure.
then
So
after their queries are done, then we can close the session.
sure, ma'am. So Nishita is asking that what is the ultimate goal of AI? So as I said, Nishita, if you remember the slide number 3 of Herb Simon, that there are two purposes. One is to augment human intelligence, and the other is to understand that how human brain works and mimic that, because the way a human brain learns is an extremely fast rate, and it's very important that we mimic that search and anticipation theory. So ultimate goal of AI are those two only, to actually augment human intelligence and actually help us unravel the mystery of how a human brain uh, creates those intuitive capabilities, how it can anticipate, how it learns. So these are the two ultimate goals of AI. Om Vadva is asking that techniques like fMRI scanning, sensory load charts, or even are compatible enough to predict dendrite activation brain function. Then what factors are still making EQ a limitation for? See, the problem is EQ is a limitation for AI for many things, for many reasons. So one of that is the limited data set. So it's not that EQ is impossible for AI as of now. So even if you see Sophia, for example, or other humanoids, they are able to make EQ predictions. But as you know, AI is never deterministic. It's probabilistic. So when the researchers correlate the probabilistic weight distribution given as an output by these humanoids and they compare it to human responses, it's not the same. And on the second hand, if you know about Turing test, which I sure you know because of if I read your question right, you have a fair understanding of this. So many machines have not passed Turing test on emotional aspects. So if you saw that Google example, it passed Turing test on a purely transactional activity. But on EQ side, similar Turing tests are conducted where they have an interaction, a more emotional conversation with a human versus a bot or humanoid, and many bots are not able to pass it. There are some companies like Wobot is there, WOE bot, which is used for early signaling of depression or emotional issues or anxiety issues in human beings. NHS in UK is working on a lot of these initiatives. So I don't think it's far when that would be a possibility, Om. But as of now, many of them have not passed the Turing test, so that's why they are not very commercially available in use. Ishank is saying that so Ishank, this same debate has happened. I don't know if you guys know the concept of Luddites, Luddits, during the textile automation era back in the 18th century. The same debate happened that people said that we don't have resources to upskill ourselves or we don't have enough money. So what can we do? Machines are taking over our work and we can't go to a good school, we can't afford. Same debate also happened during the Henry Ford era of division of labor. Same debate also happened when a clerk working in a bank said that I don't have a computer degree, I can't use computer MS Office, and it's very unfair to me. But if you see, human beings are very resilient, and that's why many people are also talking about this current pandemic as this too shall pass, and that's in our innate nature, right? I mean, if a crisis comes, if we need to upskill ourselves, otherwise we'll become irrelevant. I think that pressure is motivation enough for us as human beings to figure out means and resources. I don't want to sound bureaucratic or like a politician, but I think you and me, we both know, right? I mean, if we've got our ass online, we will get something done. So it's similar situation. If you do not know AI, there is a reasonable possibility that you will become irrelevant, or the job possibilities would remain limited for you. So it's a choice between how ambitious you are. If you're happy to have a simple job with simple benefits, you don't need to focus on AI. But if you're ambitious enough, you will figure out a way, I'm sure. Kritika is saying that can you shed light on career aspects in AI for management students? As I said, Kritika, the job opportunities for a management student are twofold. One is the functional aspect, and the other is product management. So let's say if you're MBA in HR and the company is building a HR bot, or company is using AI in recruitment or talent management or PMS, performance management system, then you can be the functional expert that entire project. Or you can be a subject matter expert in generally designing the overall AI system, the solutioning of it. You can be a product manager. You can do the end user experience handling and management for that product. So you do not need to know coding and AI, but you can do all these related areas around AI and still be relevant. Jayant is asking what are some of the places, and you don't need to guys send me private messages. Okay. Jayant is asking what are some of the places where we can learn more about AI. Jayant, as I said the question before, if you are really ambitious and if you really want to use AI to upskill yourself, there is no dearth of opportunities of resources. There are so many courses available for AI, so many content, so many ebooks, so many videos on YouTube. You are only limited by your will and ambition. There's no limit of content. I mean, it's no trade secret. You can go online and you can find so many resources for AI. So don't worry about it. Aman is asking, sir, how we can bring the human-less technology for retail store in India. DMart. Aman, I can't comment on specific companies, but if you have a similar concept like Amazon Go, why don't you develop a solution and pitch it to some of them? I mean, that's the kind of innovation, and I know Dean is also here, but ma'am, that's the kind of innovation we're looking for. Why can't students come together, create a solution, and then if you are asking me that can we pitch it to them, I'll be more than happy to take forward your solution if you have one. If you have a team together, if you build a prototype, if all it takes from me is to take you to a retail chain, I'll take it to them if you have a solution ready. So to me, to you, Aman, my offer is if you can build a solution, why not? Why not you be the one who builds the solution rather than waiting for somebody to build it and pitch it to them? Why not? And Dhruv is asking, how can a student pursuing a course like BBA can get started on AI as a skill? What is the first step? So first step, Dhruv, is to understand the business applications of AI, read through a lot of case studies, understand the basics of AI, IoT, big data, and immersive interfaces. You can be the guy who knows all these technologies, how they work and implement. You don't need to decode them, how to build them, but you have all these tools in your arsenal. It's similar to if you know MS Office, right? You don't need to know how MS Office was built, but if you can use MS Office to get a job done, you are relevant enough person in the workforce. So the first step is to understand how these disparate technologies work broadly, see through a lot of case studies, and no need to get into the technology side of it. If you are interested, go through it, but that's the first step. Amarnath Patra is saying, can I start business as a sole proprietorship? And with the help of starting a business as a sole proprietorship or LLP, LLC is a different discussion. It's got nothing to do with AI. But if you are asking me that can you start a business on your own alone? Yes, you can. Whether it's OPC or whether it's sole proprietorship, that's a legal and a CA discussion. I can't comment on it. But with the help of AI, obviously you do not need to have a lot of team. There are people who are running travel agencies, online travel agencies, using AI bots, because the bot is handling their leads, bot is handling customer inquiries and support, bot is issuing tickets using robotic process automation tools, workflow tools. So to that extent, the answer is yes. You do not need a fancy office or a big team to start your business. You can start as a single person as well, using some of these technologies. I think I have covered. Ma'am, I have covered all the questions which were sent.
Yes. So thank you so much, Karthik, and I'm sure the question was very, very interesting. And I'm sure the students learned a lot today. And I'm sure they may like to get in touch with you again. So we would like to have you again, maybe sometime with something more specific. And if there are any specific things that students may want to talk to you about or hear from you. But anyway, this session was fantastic. I've heard you earlier, and every time you come up with something new and every time it's your experience learning, that really is very enriching. So thank you so much, Karthik, and I'm sure the students are privileged and pleasure to hear you too. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope to have you again on the session.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining in.
You've been very, very kind. Just one call and you were great for the session, so you were really very kind. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Karthik, and thanks, Om, for coordinating the session for me. Kritika is my colleague, and she's coordinated the faculty, and Om is one of the students. She's very, very interested in such topics, so he's coordinated it from the student side. So thank you, Kritika, and thank you, Om. And thanks again, Karthik, and God bless everyone. Stay safe, stay happy, keep smiling, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks.